Well, good evening, everybody. The time being 6:30, I'll call this meeting of the Concord Finance Committee to order. We do not have any members online, so I believe we can call to order without the need for a roll call vote. The first item on our agenda tonight is public, well, after the call to order, the second item on our agenda tonight is public comment.
Excuse me, Eric, I should point out, we do have a quorum here.
Thank you.
Because we have 10 members in the room.
Thank you. Public comment. Do we have anybody in the room who would like to provide input or ask questions? Seeing no one, anybody online?
No hands are raised.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is meeting minutes. We have one set of draft minutes for review and approval, and those are the minutes of May the 1st. Any comments or proposed revisions on the minutes of May the 1st? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of May the 1st?
Motion to approve. Okay, that's by Dean,
Second.
by Lewis.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none?
Excellent job,
Yes, as always.
as always.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item number 4, correspondence. We did have several pieces of correspondence included in the packet. Most of those, my sense, were informational. We were CC'd on emails that were sent to the select board. We were invited to that forum on the energy performance contract earlier this week. We did have one media piece of correspondence, and that was the communication from the state certifying our free cash. And Anthony graciously offered to walk us through that.
Sure, I just switched to share the screen, Eric, so I booted you off.
Okay.
Just load this up. All right. All right, so yeah, our free cash was certified on May 16th, and the dollar amount was $15,898,216. This certainly was more than even what we thought, and if you recall, when we were talking about free cash, as far as what we were gonna, I proposed putting through those reserve stabilization funds, I always said, on the low side, it's $10.4 million. On the high side, it was probably closer to $12 million. I am always gonna go lower, because it's easier to get more money, but if you use too much, that's a problem. So I'm always gonna go on the conservative side. But with that, I just wanna walk through, just so you know how it's calculated. So, just for the sake of folks at home, what free cash is, free cash represents the amount of communities' funds that are unrestricted and available for appropriation. Mass General Law requires DOR to certify free cash each fiscal year, and it can only be used after the certification and by June 30th of that fiscal year. So it's available to us from now, from May 16th till June 30th. Then it goes back, and we have to wait until it gets recertified in case we ever needed money. So with that, last year's free cash certification on this slide was $9.8 million, and we used at town meeting those 3 warrant articles: $76,000 for the opioid prevention, this 250th celebration for $350,000, the school transportation, the reimbursement for the homeless or the housing at the shelter, and then unpaid bills. So that instantly brought our free cash down to $9.3 million. So the town begins every year with that, and then the $514,000 is collectively what was those warrant articles, the total. Building upon this chart, the next item that contributes to free cash is, as you know, we start so early in the process, and our state aid is just kind of a guess. We start with House 1, and by the time the legislature and gets their act together, it's sometimes well after our town meeting. So with that, we received an additional $139,000 in state aid. So the next thing they look at is our receipts. So our local receipts were actually almost $3 million higher than what we anticipated. And the biggest driver of that was interest income. If you recall, I borrowed for the second tranche of the middle school, which was in the vicinity of $45 million, I'll just say, around there. So we sat with that money, and the good thing is we got close to $2 million in interest income off of that money. Other drivers were other miscellaneous departments' revenues were a little bit higher than what we projected, and that was $293,000. And then jet fuel, you know, it's always kind of the unknown, and it's been going up and up. We budgeted, or they budgeted in FY '24, $450,000. It actually came in at six something. So we had an extra $181,000 in jet fuel that wasn't planned for.
And Anthony, just to be clear, jet fuel is money that Hanscom pays us?
It's jet fuel excise, right, it's the results of Hanscom, that the
Right.
state gives us our share of
Okay.
that.
And Anthony, can you explain the other department revenue? What is that?
Those are other miscellaneous, could be building permits, could be included in that, it could be, what's other fees, maybe some fire department fees for smoke permits, it could be, trying to think what other departments, there's fees that planning pay for when they, you know, so it's all those miscellaneous department fees.
And it was 293,000 above the budget?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you okay with this?
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing is the unencumbered, unexpended appropriations. So this represents lower than budgeted spending and closing out old purchase orders. So, you know, in fiscal year '24, we had a lot of vacancies, right? When you have a lot of vacancies, there's a lot of salary savings. And another area that sees savings is even health insurance. You know, there's that less people. I think that was budgeted, and that was for this year. I don't know what the budget was. I wasn't here for '24. But anyways, it came in, you know, the expense was almost $500,000 less than what was budgeted, and that's the savings as a result of, there was a switch over from Minnesota Health Group, and then just less people taking our health insurance. And then, you know, you may have recalled from prior meetings, how Concord had a history of encumbering money at the end of a fiscal year and carrying that over for multiple fiscal years. Well, that's not, you can't really do that. So, like in FY '25, you know, the goal is, certainly my goal is to have everything completed by September 15th and not be talking about this as late as we are this year. And with that, that means everything will be closed out. So there's no carry forwards. But Concord used to have that habit of doing it, which is, you can't do that. It's against the law. You know, it's against the rules of DLS, and we stopped doing that. So we did a lot of significant cleanup as a result of that, closing out old POs, making a lot of adjustments. You also had during FY '24 a conversion from admins to munis, and that's our accounting system. So with that, and you may recall that I talked about having CLA, which is an outside accounting firm, in here to help us with that, because it was a struggle. And we're not the only community that struggles when you do a conversion. It's very common, because the company Munis that does it, they don't do it very well. They're an outside of Massachusetts, and they really don't understand how we set up things in Massachusetts. So we brought them in, they cleaned up a lot of stuff. We did, you know, a lot of good work, and it brought that combined to the less than budgeted spending in FY '24. That was $3.4 million in cleanup.
Anthony?
Sure.
So you had 3.4,
That's what
$1 million?
was, when we closed out all
Yeah.
POs from FY '24 and did all prior year adjustments and
Right.
closed out stuff, it freed up this cash.
so what do you do
Because
with
it
that?
stays on the books.
It stays on the book.
Yeah, it stays on the books till you clean it up. We cleaned it up, and now it gets just funneled into free cash.
So that was
All
a
right.
one-time event.
That's a one-time event, yeah.
How much of this, though, is open positions? Because that might not be, that could carry forward to the next year, right? I mean,
Yeah, it was vacancies of existing positions. It wasn't something that we didn't,
Or I guess, okay, so how much, do you have a sense of a 3.5 million, how much was vacancy?
oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Not your
Sorry.
So it was enough vacancies that we didn't have to tap into the salary reserve in FY '24, which was $755,000 right there alone. And then we didn't have to tap into the FinCom reserve. Remember, we have that reserve balance that's under the FinCom, so that's, what, $250,000? I don't know if it was 250 in FY '24. I know we did 250 in moving forward. So that's almost $1 million right there, just in those two line items. Not to mention other departmental spending that came in less.
Okay.
I'm having difficulty picturing $3.5 million, like, where was it?
So I just went through $1 million, Kathy, right?
Yeah, no, but I mean, like,
It just sits on the books, so,
so shouldn't it have been in the cash balance if it was sitting in the?
no, it gets reserved, it gets encumbered, it's tied up. It's not available for use till we clean it all up, until we close the fiscal year and all prior years and make sure that, and then it becomes available. That's what goes to free cash.
So with that in mind, we haven't closed out 25 yet,
No, not yet.
obviously. So, so this is all 24 and prior.
Right.
Do you have a breakout of which years? I'm trying to see, was there a bolus from 23, 22, you know, and then it's,
I don't have a breakout, you know,
but you know where it comes from?
yeah, they know where it comes from. So it's, I'd have to get back with CLA. Our accounting department didn't have that information because they worked with our consultants on that. So I couldn't break that down to be more specific than general right now.
Considering that this sum is something like 14% of the year's budget, you know, the budget that's subject to guidelines of, you know, prior years, or 10% of the current year, I think it'd be good if you could give us a report, more of a report that actually says, here's where it came from, and here's what we're doing to you know, changes we've made so that we don't have these kinds of surprises again.
Yeah, we can get a little bit, drill down a little bit more on this and get some of that. You know, because I do think some of it was the conversion as far as how accounts were set up and maybe weren't set up correctly, and with the chart of accounts too. So, but we could probably get that information. Obviously, we can get that.
I guess it means
information
there
first.
were encumbrances, there were reserves that were then later released and never expended.
There was, there was
Okay.
that, and then other adjustments that were made. I can't give you the answer right now, but we could get that,
Thanks.
yeah.
So there's $3 million that can come out of free cash and reduce, no, you're shaking your head, no.
Reduce what, Kathy? Reduce the levy?
Yeah,
Using one-time revenue to reduce your tax levy is the biggest no-no in municipal government.
We used to do that, and Anthony's cautioned us.
Right,
Numerous times
that's a
about
surefire way, that and having no reserves and a bunch of other things that will downgrade our bond rating, and then you'll be paying that much more for interest, which,
okay,
as we all know,
so
the
could,
town
could we,
borrows a
could
lot.
we use it to pay down debt?
Yes.
There's a lot of different things that we could do, and I think that's one of the things that we propose is some stabilization funds, and we can have other conversations in the future. But yeah, there's all financial policies we're working on to kind of address this.
Yeah, I don't think we should lose track of this 3 million and figure out,
It starts right up for next year. We don't lose track. We won't lose track of it, believe me.
It's no longer in the couch between the cushions.
Right.
It's-
Well,
it's
I've
actually
just-
visible.
I'm-
It's
I'm-
visible
It's
now.
visible. Yeah.
it's a big number, and our tax levy is way too high. So that's all I care about.
Well,
at
that's
this
based
Read the
on some
FinCom
of the
report,
decisions
Kathy.
that town meeting makes, so it's,
yeah.
but,
What I think would be helpful, I think Dawn's request is good. I appreciate you taking that on, Anthony. What I think would be helpful, in addition to more detail on the total, is what, and we all kind of know this anyway, but just to put it out there, what are the options? What could we do, or what do you advise against us doing? We know
With free cash?
with a higher than a significantly higher than estimated free cash
Yeah, let me go
balance.
through a few slides and I'll talk about it, because there's one other kind of variable that's out there that I have my eyes on that we have to clean up. This is old COVID stuff, and I'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, I'll, give me a few slides and then we'll go back
Okay,
to that.
okay.
Anthony, before you do that.
Yeah.
Is the data point that you're gonna show us what the percentage is of our free cash, of our overall budget? Because in our report, we talk about 6% being our target for free cash. With the new figures, does that number change to 7% or 8% or 9%? I'm looking, not just for the numbers, we know the number now, 15.89 million, but
Where does that fall
where does that
into?
fall in for the percentage? You may have that in your slides, my apologies if I
I don't
preempted.
know, I don't think I have it in my slides, but when you're talking, I'll bring up that other spreadsheet that I have when calculating the reserves, and I'll see if we plug that in and see what that is.
Thank you.
All right? All right.
I have one
Sorry, let me
question.
back up. Yes.
When you were going through this, could you find why the money wasn't spent?
Yeah, that's what Dawn asked for. So we're gonna, why the money wasn't spent? Well, the bulk of it was the salary savings because of the vacancies. We had a lot of vacancies during FY '24. So we can break it down as far as where.
Okay,
Yeah, we can give you more information on it.
okay.
Okay, other adjustments, there was just $83,000, some minor adjustments that were done at DOR. And, basically, if you have a grant that's a reimbursable grant, and let's just say the firefighters grant, right? We know that was $1 million. So if somehow that we spent $800,000 and they didn't request the money, that $800,000, because it's kind of a liability on our books, they would have dinged us against free cash or reduced free cash by $800,000. So when they look at that, that's some of these other adjustments that get made. All right, so just to recap again, so you had the 9.3, that was the net of the annual town meeting, 2024 annual town meeting. Then we had the excess cherry sheets, state aid, I'm sorry. The excess local receipts, that unencumbered, unexpended appropriations of 3.4, which we'll get you some more information on, and then the other adjustments. So that's how the free cash was determined at the $15+ million.
As you're going forward, do you have to have this reviewed?
Oh, this gets certified by DOR. Yeah, we don't, this is something that Department of Revenue spends 2 weeks and verifies everything, and then they're the ones that certify, it's not us.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so looking forward, so we have, for this year, we have 4 warrant articles that would go against that free cash total that we have, which leaves a projected, right now, a projected free cash balance of $13.7 million, which as a percent of is 13.3, all right. So that's right now. Now, I think this is the last slide. Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, let me just bring that back up, sorry.
So does that answer Carmen's question?
No.
No, not yet.
I
It's
have,
not the right.
No, no.
Anthony, maybe I misremember, where is the 250 that the town is asking for the, oh, that's it,
It's right
MCI
there,
Concord,
yeah.
it's wastewater.
So now
Plus
the
other
only
things,
thing,
okay.
so.
Never mind.
This is what we would assume to be the starting point for next year. But one thing that Department of Revenue didn't, we use the word gig us on, is old COVID expenses. So you remember they had the CARES Act, and then the FEMA kicked in, and there was a lot of expenses that FEMA, you had to apply to FEMA and ask for the reimbursements. So right now, I know that in looking at those old counts, and I don't even know when COVID was, it's 5 years ago now, but anyways, it's still sitting out there where there's a CARES account that has more in it than what was expended, but there's a FEMA account that has, it's about 750,000 to the negative right now. So that has to get cleaned up, and that's one of our goals, is that we have to get that cleaned up, because if we have to close out that gap, it has to come from free cash. So we would be then, so of that 13.7, I'd say, I wanna put $1 million right now that we have to figure that out, because that's a problem that's been going on for 5 years that we have to solve. So now I'd say our starting point might be more like 12. That's just as, and again, things could change if we have grants that are outstanding, you know, that number goes down, but that's kind of the gist of how free cash is, how we came to this point. Listen, it's a you know, I was shocked as everybody, and, you know, it's a good thing at the end of the day, you know, that, like, Dawn, I think that cleaning the cushions and getting that money out and making it visible to everybody is good.
Yeah. Could it just as easily have turned out the other way, where there were obligations that were not reserved for?
Yeah, but that's why I went with the lower number. It never would be that much off, because we know what we have for grants and so forth, so we would, no, to be negative, highly doubtful.
I just feel like we have too much cushion all around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All around, there's too much cushion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need less cushion.
Yeah, fewer cracks.
Did you notice it over, was there anything that you noticed that was consistent over the 3 years or so that you looked back? Like where it was?
I didn't look back. That's what I had our accounting consultants come in and do.
Oh,
And then our
did they
accountants-
notice it?
I haven't, she's on vacation, so
Okay.
by the time this has been certified, she's been out on vacation, so I haven't been able to connect with her, because I had the same question, is like, I'd like to know where and why
Right.
this happened, and
Right.
is there anything else, and just to understand a little bit more. So
Yeah,
I have the same questions that I'll touch base with her as soon as she's back.
okay.
Okay. Well, I know the last thing you need is more homework, Anthony, but if you could take that action item per Dawn's request to dig
Yeah,
into the overage a little bit more, and then my part two is to just really, really concise. What are the options when you have when you have free cash come in substantially higher than expected? What are your options? Obviously, we know one-time tax relief is generally not a good idea.
Listen, my immediate response to that is, you know, I know that there's some questions with the stabilization funds. It is my high recommendation to you and anybody else in town that you continue to proceed with those. And the most important reason why, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, I think we all know that there's a lot of uncertainty on the federal level, right? So with that, if by some chance, and I'm just gonna make a hypothetical, that the state aid, that they cut $1 million to Concord. If that happens, you have one option. The only option would be no cushion. The only option would be is we'd have to immediately reduce services. We'd be looking at layoffs, furloughs, and you'd have a significant impact on services, because you can't make that up on the, free cash is not available to you after July 1st, and it's not available to be used till we set the tax rate in November. So to have that $1 million in a stabilization, you now, if something happened, could call a special town meeting and say, we don't want to jeopardize our services, we still want that, and we want to use $1 million of that and leave that 93,000 balance into the general stabilization. That's your only option. Other than that, you're talking about drastic reduction of services. So that's my strong recommendation. I know there was, I heard the select board meeting. I would have loved to have been able to talk about this a little bit more. I know time was short. You know, as far as the $100,000 capital stabilization, that's a good start. Think back to when they're COVID and you stopped doing capital. All that did is push off the inevitable, and your roads started deteriorating more, to the point where now you are asking the voters to go above the 2.5% and pay more. So this is a start to do that. And then as far as the debt stabilization, you know that you have 2 buildings that you have to build down the road. The more that you can put away money into a debt stabilization, the better you're gonna be, because I've done this in another community. Littleton built 3 buildings. We did not ask the taxpayers for debt exclusion at all, because we planned for it. I know putting money aside is, when you're paying the taxes that you're paying, is tough to do, but the interest that you're paying on debt is, I think it's a little crazy. And the only other thing that I would say is why you should continue on with destabilization. If you leave it into free cash, you basically just let the Commonwealth of Massachusetts earn 5 or 6% on your money, when we can earn 1.7, on now 1.7 million, we could earn the 5%. It's totally up to the town, but I just want everybody to be really clear with that. Why not take that money, put it into a stabilization fund, and make money? Because as you can see, we make money on your money, right? Which is a good thing. So that's just my rant on those.
Anthony,
Okay.
just to be clear, we don't earn interest on free cash, we do
Not
on
earn
reserves.
interest on free cash. That's, the state of Massachusetts thanks you very much.
Can we
Colin,
take
we
it
do
out
need to move on.
anytime? Can we
No,
just-
No, that's
you
what I
can't.
said.
No, but I
No.
mean, can we shift that
No.
decision?
If
We
you, if it's
cannot.
in a stabilization fund, it only takes a town meeting to move that money.
To move it, okay.
Colin gets the last word, then we gotta move on.
Thank you. Anthony, I did a quick calculation. 15.89 million out of 144 million for the overall budget is 11%. So using that number, we jump from 6% to 11% of our overall budget. That's it.
Thank you, Colin. You saved me a few minutes. I owe you.
Okay. I'm gonna steal the screen back, Anthony.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
sorry.
Thank you for that information. We'll look forward to those additional details. Am I sharing? No.
Yeah, you should be able to. Yep.
Okay. Back to our agenda, and I'll note while we were discussing that, Shri joined the meeting remotely, so Shri is now online.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 5, liaison report. I circulated a written compiled liaison report. I'll pull it up on the screen. Did anybody have any late-breaking additions or clarifying questions for the liaison report? Colin?
I do. I attended the PEG Access Advisory Committee meeting, which was today at 3 o'clock. They reported that on June 30th, the Select Board will be considering and most likely signing the Comcast contract, which will have a 10-year term. Apparently Comcast has agreed to all of the terms on the side letter agreements as well as the main agreement. So that's the update for that.
Okay, Dawn?
Yeah, on the MCI Concord Advisory, there will be a workshop for the community on May 28th. There'll be 2 sessions, the afternoon, 3 to 5, evening, 6 to 8, both at Giroux Park in West Concord. And then an online-only workshop the following day, that is May 29th at 7 to 8 p.m. on Zoom. Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn. Anyone else?
I'm sorry. I forgot to introduce my new assistant CFO, and I wanted to do that to start, and my apologies, Ryan. Ryan Ferrara started with this. This is week 1.5. He keeps coming back, so that's a good thing, right? But Ryan comes to us. I hired Ryan when I was the town administrator in Littleton, and I hired Ryan to be my assistant. Ryan went on after I left, where he assumed the duties of Director of Finance and Budget, so Assistant Town Administrator, Director of Finance and Budget. Before that, Ryan, similar to myself, was a town administrator in a couple of communities. He has, I hate to say almost 30 years, maybe more, of government, and with the city of Newton. He was a business manager for Public Works, so he knows Public Works really well, and he also has some experience working for the Mass MWRA. So he brings a ton of experience. It's somebody that I've been trying to get for a long time. It just took me a lot of dinners and a lot of IPAs, and then we have Ryan here. So I'm excited because it's the help that I needed, and we're already starting to make some really good progress in just a week and a half. So, and I think we're going to see a completely different outline for next year, because we're going to hold a lot of people accountable for deadlines. That no more excuses. It just can't happen. It just puts too much. So Ryan, I don't know if you want to say, oh, yeah, before Ricardo yells at you.
Yeah, that's right. I'll put a mic on it, right? Because that's, yes, I've been used to having to put this in front of me. So, yeah, thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that. Some other things just to add to Anthony's piece is I live in Arlington. So I was a 6-year member of the Arlington Finance Committee. So we're actually 21 people as opposed to your 15. So I know you think the 15 was too big. So so I've had experience with that. I'm an 11-year member of Representative Town Meeting also in Arlington as well. So kind of seeing this from both sides and, you know, a lot of experience, as Anthony mentioned, both in serving my community, but also in being committed to public service. So, you know, being here is great. Great to be back with Anthony again. So, and I think Concord is very fortunate to have someone of Anthony's leadership capacity, and I do look forward very much to doing that again. I would also note that in Littleton, I also work with Suresh. I know he's not here tonight, so he had already told me very nice things about all of you. So it's which is great, and I know he can't be here tonight, but if he's listening, Suresh, I hope you're well. And so, but yeah, working with him on a school building project. So it's wonderful to have people who have that kind of knowledge and understanding, because people who are on the finance committee, you know, understanding what it takes to build a building, what it's required. So I think, you know, and being able to tap that kind of knowledge is really important. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate that introduction, and look forward to working with all of you. So.
Welcome.
Thank you. Now, I had heard that we were the biggest finance committee with 15. It sounds like that was
No, actually,
bad information.
Brookline, I think, has 27 or 29.
Oh, my God.
They break down into subcommittees a lot, and then they report back, and they all have to do reports, and they take a certain department. It did work, but it was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Ryan. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Okay. I had one update on the liaison report. Attached to the report that I distributed, I'm going to be submitting a letter to the bridge, just alerting readers that our report is done. It was included in the annual town meeting briefing book, which was mailed. I received mine at home, I think yesterday. So that's the good news. It's in the briefing book. The not so good news, it starts on page 95. So I've already heard from people who say, where's the FinCom report? I thought you guys do this big report. And it is in the briefing book. So we're going to do a very short and sweet letter. If, you know, for the bridge's consideration, of course, it's up to them whether they publish it or not. Just letting folks know that it is available as a standalone document on the website, and we'll include a link.
Color.
In color. Colin.
I have a request. Could we have them to repost the FinCom report, because it cuts off the page numbers on the section that's posted online on our Finance Committee page? So
I
whoever's
already,
responsible-
yeah, we already teed that up. We
Oh,
already
thank
teed that
you.
up. Yeah. Yeah, just the standalone version, it looks like it got chopped off. It's still legible, but yeah.
I'm
So
gonna send you
we're
a
on
link,
that.
because Hull does a really neat online version. I'll send it to the committee. I was really impressed with what they did. Oh, Suresh actually sent it to us.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It was really nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in any event, my draft letter is included in the packet. If anybody has any feedback, please let me know. I'd like to submit it sooner rather than later, with hopes that it gets published next week ahead of town meeting. So that's the liaison report. Back to our agenda. The next item is item number 6, preparation for annual town meeting. And I have a slide, and then I have a document. First, the big picture is the schedule, as we all know. It kicks off next Monday, June 2nd at 6:30, which is an earlier start time than has been tradition. I think it previously used to start at 7, but there was consensus to start earlier with the hope that it would end earlier each night. So it starts at 6:30 on Monday, June 2nd. As needed, it'll continue into Tuesday, June 3rd, Wednesday, June 4th, et cetera. Expectations for FinCom members' participation. First, all members are asked to attend all sessions of annual town meeting in person. There is no Zoom option. Now, I realize folks have commitments, and that may not be realistic for everybody, and that's certainly understandable. I ask that you let me know if you expect to not be able to attend any of the days. And the reason for that is we may be asked to take a position on timely items. For example, if an amendment is offered on the floor and the amendment has a spending or borrowing impact, it's reasonable that we'd be asked to take a position on it. So we have to maintain a quorum to be able to do that. So I'll be tracking to make sure we have a quorum. The moderator has allotted us time for the traditional introductory statement. I will do that. I think we get 3 minutes. I'm going to very quickly summarize our report, the key points of our report. We also have time allotted for each of the 3 budget articles. Yep, yeah, I'll get to Sri. I assign those to myself, but I don't need to be the one to present the FinCom position on each of those. If anybody else is interested, I welcome volunteers. And we're going to go through article by article the assignments, or the proposed assignments. We may be asked to share our position on other articles, and I've got a proposed speaker list, which we'll buzz through. Shri, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I got a question. When we go for this meeting, is there a particular spot we get to sit together, or we just go
Yeah.
anywhere? And how does it work?
We
The
have
town
our own
meeting.
table.
Sit at the front.
Yep.
Sit at the front. There's, we're off to one side. We have our own designated table. We usually sit next to the school committees. So we're a little apart. Dee usually brings really good
I was
snacks,
going to say snacks.
Okay.
and she
That is
will, I'm
important.
sure, outdo herself this year since it's her last opportunity. And we've done it, it's an adventure, Shri, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've come for the meeting, but of course we distributed dispersed in the crowd, but now I know where to come. I'll look for the snacks for sure.
What? What?
He said he'll look for it.
Oh, you'll look for the snacks.
He's not
Oh,
taking them,
oh,
he's
okay.
not taking them.
Okay.
It's okay.
I think,
I'll smell my way to the front of the table somewhere.
I think the other way to talk about where we are is when you come into the room and you look at the stage, we are
Right.
at the front, right below the stage, on the right-hand side. The
Okay, got it. I'm coming.
Right.
Definitely.
Select board's on the left.
And Sheree, it's important that everybody check in to get your clicker as well as your piece of paper to waive to vote if necessary. So
Yeah.
at the front desk, and then go to our early meeting spot, because we still have to vote on 2 articles.
Yes. We will post for a FinCom meeting for each of the 3 nights as needed. We likely won't need to meet as a FinCom for each of it may not be 3 nights, but for each of the nights.
You want us there at 6 o'clock?
Yeah, we'll post for that first day. It'll have to be on the early side because it's starting early. 5:30.
5:30? And what we did last year would be.
Yeah, last
Yeah.
year we actually had.
Yeah, I'm glad you flagged that, Kathy. I hadn't thought about that.
CPC stuff.
Are we going to just,
That's all right.
are we just
We
gonna
need
stay to the corner of our area? Or are you gonna get another room?
5:45.
Because we can always run into town meeting, like the
Yeah.
first 10, 15 minutes of town
Yeah,
meeting
nothing- yeah.
are
Yeah, okay.
If you determine that you want to cut it back or something before we post the agenda, you can always make that adjustment.
Yeah, let's tentatively say 5:45. We'll find a spot. I know last year we met in the library before the meeting. We'll find a spot at the high school. I'll be in touch with that information.
Okay.
Let me take an action item.
45 Monday. It's like-
Post for, yeah, it'll be Monday, June 2nd.
Will somebody send a calendar invite or just?
Yes, yeah. And Shree's question stole my thunder. I do have a bullet about the expectation is that we'll be sitting in the front, as Lois and Colin shared. Of note, if it's not clear, we're facing the audience. So you just need to be mindful of everybody can see you. Don't pick your nose or anything, because everybody can look right at you. My last bullet, FinCom members, as individuals may, this goes without saying, you may exercise your right to speak individually on articles if you so choose, but the expectation is that you will not go to the official speaker's microphone. That if you're speaking on an article as an individual, you'll go to an audience microphone. And I ask that you indicate that you're a member of the Finance Committee, but you're speaking individually. You're not representing the Finance Committee. That will only happen when the Finance Committee is asked to speak to opposition on an article. Okay? And that's a good segue to the list of proposed official FinCom speakers for each of the articles. I'll pull that document up now.
Before you get to that, is there, are there any, did you say there were 3 articles that we are expected to speak on? That ahead of time we're expected to speak on, and then the rest are just in case?
Exactly,
Okay, got it.
exactly. Yes, Carmen has allotted us, the moderator has allotted us time to speak to each of the 3 budget articles, the town, CPS, and the region. My expectation is it'll be effectively a minute, that they met the guideline. We voted unanimously to recommend affirmative action. I just think it's noteworthy that they met the guideline, since in recent town meetings, that's not necessarily been the case. And
That's
it's,
a really good idea, actually.
but in terms of other articles, I've got the full list of articles that we heard in our public hearings with our recommendation, and this comes right out of our report. I copied and pasted right out of our report. I included the narrative owner, the person who drafted the write-up on each article. And then you can, I hope my methodology here is clear. In most cases, I propose assigning the narrative author as the speaker on standby for each article, with a few exceptions. Like I said, for the budget articles, I assign those to myself. Let me start scrolling so you can see what I mean. Article 8, debt exclusion for road maintenance. Colin authored the recommendation write-up in the briefing book, or in the report, so I propose Colin as the speaker, if we're asked to state our position on that article.
We're not usually asked
No,
to
we're not
speak.
usually.
No, we're not, we're
Okay,
not.
so that's why I was a little confused.
We're
All right.
not. It just, if it happens.
If it happens,
I want to make
okay.
sure we have somebody on standby. I can gladly cover it.
Okay, no, I got,
Just, I certainly don't need to be the one to speak to every single article. There's also a few, some of the higher profile articles where I was in the minority, and to be honest, I don't think it,
you don't want to speak to them.
it's not that I don't want to, it's
Yeah.
that I
Preference.
would certainly articulate the official FinCom position, but I
Just be
didn't
weird.
necessarily vote for it. It looks odd, so. With few exceptions, it's the narrative owner whom I propose speaking.
Just a comment. I think that the Finance Committee should be able to speak on any and all, but we should be speaking on any and most of the articles. I think people should recognize that the Finance Committee is an important body for this town. And it should be recognized that we do hold opinions, because many people won't read these documents. And I think it's important that they understand that we do work hard.
I think Dee is right, and I would encourage you in your opening statement to guide people to our report, not just to the summary, but to the report, because in our report, we've got the explanation for almost every one of the recommendations. So that gives people more background and lets them know that yes, we are involved in this process.
I agree with that because, and this is both the good news and the bad news, the briefing book in the reproduction of the text of the warrant has one line, you know, Select Board voted affirmative action, Finance Committee voted affirmative action.
Right.
I remember that we got beat up a little bit a few years ago because we had made recommendations without necessarily stating a rationale. So I think it's a good idea to let people know in the room that there is, behind all of our recommendations, there was reasoning, and they can find it in our report. But I don't know that town meeting wants us all getting up and talking. This is an attempt to streamline the process, shorten the days and the nights. The feedback apparently that the town meeting committee got, the strongest feedback was, it goes on too long.
Exactly.
So we have to be strategic
That's
about
fine.
where we're going to speak, and I think I totally agree with you, that the people there should understand us as a resource and should understand that this is a process and we
Right.
spend a lot of time on it, and we can explain it, but I think we do need to be asked to make the explanation, because I think we have to be respectful of that view that people have.
Would it
Goes on too long.
Would it be reasonable when describing the role of the Finance Committee to maybe give a scope of the responsibilities? For example, that there's 15 people who meet 15 times a year and, accumulate, for how many hours? I mean, I think, because of what you just said, for all of those reasons, is it reasonable to describe the scope of the work?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'll do. In
Yeah.
my 3 minutes, I'll spend a minute or so just on what the FinCom's all about, what our role and responsibilities are, and then I'll get into the report itself.
And maybe thank the Concord Bridge for having done such, good reporting. I mean, we worked hard for the last 2 years to get all the communication up. Those of you who worked on the communications.
So you may want to consider also talking to the town moderator and, just like, how can we assist them or her, and also what our role could be in providing additional information. If she feels it's too much, it's going to take too much time, that's one thing, but I think it would be good to speak with her about that.
We did have this plan came out of a town meeting
Plan.
prep meeting
Oh,
that
it
the
did.
moderator hosts.
Yeah.
It happened on Friday,
Okay.
where she made it clear she wants to keep things moving this year.
Okay.
The feedback that the town meeting study committee got was
Okay.
that it goes on way too long and they're losing people. So I think one of the priorities this year is to keep it moving.
I think, following up on what Dee said, I think one thing to maybe make Carmen aware of, you don't know where the conversation's gonna go on some of the controversial articles. And there might be times points in the discussion where having FinCom stand up and just explain what the rationale was behind the recommendation, or reference a particular analysis that we did, would be useful. So Carmen should be aware that we're there as a resource.
We stand up at any point we want to if we want to talk.
Right, at the microphone.
Yeah, we don't have to ask her no, not us personally. If Eric wants to say something on behalf of the FinCom, he stands up and acknowledges the moderator, and then he can talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't need to have like a conversation with her beforehand. Usually if the select board or one of us, or even the school committee, if one of them stand up and face the moderator,
That's true.
it's an indication that like the committee has something to say about it.
Yeah,
So,
and also, you're sitting right in front of her anyway.
Yeah, I can give her
And
the-
so you can give her a heads up that you want to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just ask again, and this is not, I hope this is not a power play on my part. This could go, the expectation is that
Hey, if you
I
want
would,
it, you can have it.
on an ad hoc basis, I would do that. If somebody
Yes.
wants to speak individually,
Right.
you'd go to the audience microphone to do so. It could very well be that we're talking about something that, I'm making this up, the amenities building, and somebody really
Don't
feels
bring that
passionate about that.
That's gonna be the hot issue, especially for FinCom, because we were 7
usually it happens when an audience member asks a question
Yeah.
kind of to FinCom, And then,
That happens.
then Eric would stand up and address that. That's usually when it happens, you know, we're kind of silent otherwise.
But please, we don't have to go through this document in detail. Please take a look at your assignments. Again, in most cases, they align with your narrative assignments from the report. If folks, for whatever reason, want to make some trades, or you know you're not going to be around, or whatever the case may be, let me know, and we can make swaps.
Eric, your chart does not indicate which articles have been placed on the consent calendar, but some have been placed on the consent calendar.
Which
And they're-
makes the likelihood of a discussion
You know,
remote.
Yeah, it is still possible that they get pulled, and it is still remote, but it's possible that we'd be asked
So
for.
some of these that are gray, that says there is no motion anticipated, there's no need to have
Right.
anybody speak.
I
mean, she
kept,
just-
I kept those just for, you know,
In case.
to be complete in the
Okay,
list of
all right,
articles in our scope,
okay,
but you're right.
all
Yeah,
right.
those have been pulled. Those have effectively been
Yeah.
pulled.
Do we have any indication yet as to whether or not the stabilization fund articles are going to move forward?
Excuse me?
18 and
Or
19.
the stabilization
up to us.
fund?
18 and 19.
Yeah, this, you referenced these, Anthony. These are Articles 18 and 19. The Select Board intends to deliberate on them and possibly vote at their next meeting, which is Tuesday,
Okay.
the 27th. It's not Monday because of Memorial Day, Tuesday, the 27th. Our position, we formally voted to defer action until town meeting. So I want to stay consistent with that vote and that action.
Got it.
I don't think it would be appropriate to take them up before town meeting, because we communicated to the residents that we were going to defer until town meeting.
Eric, what about Article 33, the MCI Concord allocation of $250,000? How, is that going to change because of the recent announcement that Anthony had circulated that says there's an earmark for, just happens to be at that dollar amount in the Senate's version of the budget? How's that going to play out? Because they could get 250, they could get 500,000. How are we going to deal
I
with
think
that?
that's a question that I would hope someone will ask at town meeting. Maybe the select board might want to think about it. What happens to that allocated 250 if they get
Did
adequately
we-
funded
we-
by the state?
We had
Lois, they
this
told us
we
that
had-
they would not
Go for it, yeah.
move that if they got money from the state. They may choose to move it because it's not yet official,
Well,
Yeah,
right?
well,
right.
that-
But they
that-
said if we do then get the money, we won't
that-
use the free
That was
cash.
their comment during,
Okay, well, let's get that comment
they, wait a
during
minute,
town
they,
meeting.
Yeah, I
they,
would like to hear
they
that during town meeting.
commented that, number one, if they don't get any money from the state and they don't have it approved at town meeting, then they have no money.
Right.
Right.
Even if, and they said, even if the state says they're going to give it to us, we may not get it until November, in which case it's too late.
Right.
So that's my understanding of why we are for this.
Yeah, and it's certainly not a done deal. It's in the Senate budget. It wasn't in the House budget, which means it has to go to conference committee, and then the governor could ultimately veto it anyway. So it's still got a ways to go. So it's not a done deal. But thank you for flagging that, Anthony, anyway. It's good to know. Okay. So again, please take a look at the list. Let me know if you have any concerns. We can make trades. You know, if it's not if we're at town meeting and you've stepped away and it comes up, somebody else can jump in to cover. It's not meant to be like a source of stress during town meeting. We'll take care of it. Back to our agenda. Finance Committee schedule and goals. This being our last regular meeting of the 2024-2025 cycle, I thought it would be appropriate to take one last look at our schedule and goals for the year. So I've got the visual of our schedule that we got used to here with the completed months grayed out. It's like a trip down memory lane, seeing all the meetings we had. We're now in May. We're almost done with May. And our last big milestone is, of course, to participate in town meeting at the beginning of June. In terms of goals, these were the goals that we identified for ourselves it was on May 23rd. So it was a year ago tomorrow that we
Wow.
identified these goals. And we periodically checked in on them. We did it roughly once a quarter. What I think would be helpful is to take a step back and reflect on how good or not so good a job we did on achieving these goals, and then big picture, just on feedback, what worked well, what we could have done better as the year winds down. And my motivation for that, one, I just think it's good practice in general. Two, it's also something that we can hand over to the next finance committee. So when we sit down to craft our goals for next year, we can have this feedback in mind.
Question, at the last select board meeting, at the chair's breakfast, the select board chair suggested that the committees wait before forming their goals until the select board makes their goal decisions sometime in July, I think. I don't think we should be tied to that schedule, and I would recommend to the next chair that we set our goals based on what FinCom think is appropriate at our schedule. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect to the select board, I don't think our goals are
agree
dependent
with
on
that.
theirs. They can be helpful to hear their goals, but
Yeah,
I don't think they should drive
I would
ours.
suggest that when they do have their goals, we could look at them to see if there's any
Yeah.
amendment or something that we should add to our goals, but not necessarily wait for them to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think we should wait.
yeah. Okay. So with that in mind, I open it up. Do folks have thoughts on our goals, what went well, what we could have done better? I prepared a little grid that we could populate as we talk through it. Pat, thanks to Pat, she got back to me with some feedback via email, but feel free to share.
Well, I have a question. The financial policies goal, did we do anything along those lines?
Well, we
We did the,
drafted a proposed policy for the select board's consideration. It's up to them to create policies for the town. And they had us in for twice. And then I guess this coming Tuesday, they'll debate it.
that was for the reserves, correct?
Correct. It was a
So-
policy for all types of reserves, free cash, stabilization funds.
So, but this goal says support staff initiative to update and document financial policies, so
It's related.
Yeah. So
did
I'll
we
just
do
add-
anything for you?
Yeah, actually, Ryan and I, over the past two Wednesdays, participated in the Division of Local Services workshop on financial policies. So we have a draft of best practice that Division of Local Services recommends. So what we're doing now is we're going to tailor them to Concord. And then there is two sets of policies. There's one that's internally for town departments, purchasing, so forth. And then there's the bigger ones that the select board would ultimately, we would present, and then it would be adopted as a policy. So it is something that we're working on, and we've been waiting for this Division of Local Services because ultimately we want to do best practices and put the Concord in the best financial situation. So we're making some progress.
Is that something that we can be useful on?
Yeah, I think so, especially, I would imagine that maybe the select board might want to hear from, especially those policies with reserves, with debt and all of that, which I think impacts the whole community. So, we haven't gotten there and we haven't, once we work through them internally with Kerry, I think at that point, we would determine how to present it to the select board and finance committee and what the process will be.
Good, okay.
Other thoughts on our goals? I mean, I'll start with the first one, hit our target dates for our key deliverables. I think we nailed that one.
Yeah.
We got our
It's gonna be-
guidelines
it's-
done.
We did, but it's going to be different next year because the timeline is going to be shifted by a month back. We had extra time this year. We won't have that extra time next year, unfortunately.
That's true. So we hit all deadlines.
I'd also also like to say on the operations for meetings, I think Eric did a great job in keeping us on track and getting us there. I think it was very nice to be able to have some predictability in the meetings. So thank you for keeping the
Absolutely.
meetings well organized and on time as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a personal goal of mine, was to get, influenced by my wife, was to get,
Yeah, all my time, okay.
a few of the hearings got a little dicey, but we mostly stuck to our timelines.
And to topic, so I think that we stuck to
Yes.
topic very well.
This year, yes, that is true.
We stuck to topics. Okay, other thoughts?
I'd like to,
We made progress on capital. I don't think we're there, but that's because that's something we can do independently. But I think, and I think it's an area where we want to pay a lot of attention and keep the pressure up on the town and the schools on capital planning through next year.
Yeah, I agree that we know now what the needs are.
Yeah.
It's more trying to figure out how to guide or advise the town on how to prioritize those needs,
Yeah.
right? And to plan for them. And part of that is the reserves policies, but part of that is just like having kind of an understanding of asset lives and kind of
Right.
replacement
Yeah.
needs and all that.
I agree.
Yeah, that's
I'd
what I
like-
hope that we carry over and we refine, because I could imagine us creating a capital plan that doesn't have any of the uses for the money, but rather the timing of the sourcing of the money based, so that we don't have these big steps in
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
tax rates.
I'd like to comment on communications. As I said earlier, I think that Eric and Dee did a fabulous job of communicating with the community. We're going to miss you, and I hope there's someone who can pick up the mantle.
Along that line about communication, I think that, thank you for saying that. I'd like us to, or next year, you can think about this. How do we communicate more fully? And how do we get messages out? Do we take fabulous minutes and just, highlight a paragraph and somehow distribute it? I just haven't figured out how do we,
We need to do a TikTok movie.
well, maybe. The other could be, you have a column in the Bridge. And whoever is going to be communications next year would be able to just write something. It doesn't even have to be a whole column. It could just be a couple of paragraphs.
We talked about doing that, and I think what became the substitute for it is letters to the Bridge, which we did at certain specific points to announce something that we had done. So there was a letter in the Bridge when we finalized the guidelines. And Eric's letter will be in the Bridge, and there were a couple of other
Yeah,
interim letters.
he did one on revenue generation.
Yeah,
We did one at the
Exactly.
start. Lindsay and I co-authored a letter at the start, just laying out the need for people to pay attention with the guidelines and the tax increases. That was well received.
so that's been, I don't know that the Bridge wants us writing a column, that's
No,
up to the
well,
Bridge.
They probably
but,
might not, but once a month, they could certainly entertain that. I'm just thinking that, how do we get our citizens to want to understand more fully how the town works, the costs associated with that, the costs associated with the schools?
Should we give free donuts and coffee?
It's not an easy thing, but it's just a suggestion that maybe think about it for next year, that you try, expand our communications.
There's a new communication system that Megan Zamuto is going to be doing. I just heard about it. It is communication through Minuteman Media Network called Civic Concord. She's going to be doing these broadcasts, basically, about some particular area, and I would recommend that the next chair schedule some time with her to say, okay, here's what's going on with FinCom, here, what we'd be looking at, here are some priorities. And that's something that I just heard about during the PEG Access Committee meeting today. But Megan
Great.
Zamudo's in charge of that.
What's your last name, Schluter?
Right, no, Megan Zamudo, she's the
Samuda, okay,
deputy town manager.
yeah, of course.
Looking back in the, I know this isn't time for ideas right now, but looking back 20 years ago, previous FinCom reports were very different, and they often included results of surveys that FinCom conducted among the citizens, asking, how is the town doing in this area or that area? What are your priorities for the town, roads, schools, et cetera?
Taxes.
And, yeah, taxes, do you feel your taxes too high? That sort of thing. So it doesn't have to be one way. I mean, it doesn't have
Right.
to be from us. It
Like
can
that, yeah.
can be coming in.
Yeah.
All right, but I know we need to stay on schedule, so we'll save that one for Lois's agenda.
No, these are great thoughts that'll clearly carry over into next year, goals for next year. Any other thoughts on this year's goals? What worked well, what we could have done better, where we may have missed the mark?
I have a suggestion, and this
Please.
involves D. Minuteman Tech, we didn't have a whole lot of connection with there. I know that Paul did the best he could, being the liaison. I'm hoping that Dee, as the new Concord representative, will be able to give us a little more insight as to what information we can have, or how we can influence what happens, or at least give us information about what's happening from the
They do
Minuteman to
plays. They have their own theater, so I'll tell you when they're having a production.
Perfect, that's exactly what I want.
No, but
That was
I hear
one
what
area.
you're saying, I hear what you're saying. And one of the,
What group is she
just not
talking
to, not to belabor this point, but one of the reasons why I was really interested in Minuteman Tech was because their per pupil cost was higher than our high school per pupil cost, and I wanted to understand why. So, but I like that idea. You might,
You'll be our guest.
whoever, well, whoever is going to be chair next year, I will pass that information along.
That's
Thank
great.
you. That's some-
Yeah, that's great.
Two things I think we did that worked really well that I'd like to hope we can continue are the written liaison reports, for one, and the collaboration with Carlisle's Finance Committee on the CCHS.
Great.
That went really well.
Yeah, that was
Good.
real,
That was nice.
yeah, Eric gets a lot of credit for that.
Go, Eric.
He really pushed that.
And
I
the,
think
and
it made
the
process much-
breakthrough with the schools on special education, I think that was huge.
I think the school's staying within the guideline.
Yeah. Yep.
And Pat can talk with that too, because we've both been going to those meetings or zooming into those meetings. It wasn't easy for them.
I think the guidelines were the most important aspect of everything. But again, to communications, I still think that there are issues where things go on and the school committee decides, and we can't really wrap our hands around it. We ask questions after, but they've already approved it. And so I don't know how to unravel that.
Yeah, it's,
Again, I think working through the the out-of-school district gives us an entree into kind of teasing out what goes on there. And I'm hoping, since that's going to come as an agenda item again, since it was a one-year deal, that might, again, get us closer to, and I think, Dee, you've made that point, closer to some of the committee members. I know them, some of them personally, to the point where my vote came to my attention in the middle of a funeral. And so I don't want it that close, but I do think it's healthy that we get closer to them.
The other thing is they have several new members too on the school committee this year. So it might be in this committee's interest to, start crossing a bridge or you know, whatever kind of phrase you want to use, to get to, because they are new members, so, you know, the school committee is not an easy gig to understand. So, you know, I think it would be to this committee's best interest as well as to the school committee's best interest to try to build a couple of bridges there.
I'd also like to point out that on the revenue side, Eric built some bridges to other communities that have been through commercial development projects like that Concord may be considering, say the MCI Concord site or 2229 Main Street. And that was very beneficial because that gives us lessons learned from neighbors. And so I think that worked well, and it is a good roadmap for us to continue following as we move forward. And because we'll have to provide some input in the creation of zoning changes, et cetera, that could lead to commercial revenue that helps to diversify our tax base. This stuff doesn't all happen in 1 year, so it isn't a goal that you check off, but it's something that becomes a part of our DNA in our process.
No, I totally agree with that, because we're on record. The report really emphasizes the need that we identified as a group to find revenue sources for the town other than just the residential tax base. So we're on record as encouraging that, so we need to understand better what the options are and what the views of the community are. We need to be monitoring that very carefully.
So we've been on record for years saying that, though, and I don't know how much progress we made for this. MCI is definitely, because it's a new thing coming down the road, right? And we have that land and able to do something, but I don't see how, much revenue generation that we push forward with what we have.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Everything is coming from, MCI.
Well, and
you know.
2229.
What's that?
Started the pilot program stuff.
Yeah, the pilot program is an opportunity
It's
for.
an opportunity, yeah, but I think we need to push that further of what we can change in the community outside of MCI and stuff like that
Yeah,
as well.
I agree with you,
And
Greg.
because we've been saying for 3 years, more than 3 years, that,
Yeah.
and my time on the FinCom, I haven't seen it come too much. Anthony, I know your stuff has gone, but it hasn't,
Well,
we keep
but-
saying it, but we haven't done too much.
Well, yeah, you're right. And
And it's not just, and I'll be clear, right, it's not us to drive, the sources of that.
no,
Maybe, yeah,
go
maybe
ahead.
we could work more, I've thought about the Economic Vitality Committee.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the right committee for us to maybe meet with early in the cycle to understand kind of what are they doing? How can maybe we work together or support each other's efforts? Because planning board, they're kind of more specialized on the zoning side. I know that's really important for economic development, but it's not really our lane. But maybe economic vitality is, so.
We had one meeting with them this year, right?
Did we?
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Okay.
But it was really just a presentation.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, it wasn't.
FYI.
I wonder if there's
That's what I
more-
mean, right, we sort of just, so we gotta
More we
push
can
further,
do to
yeah.
maybe have priorities that are aligned with each other
It's
or
very
support
interesting
each
to hear
other.
that meeting, though, about parking spaces and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a good
Or-
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
is
maybe
good.
there are other committees like that we could maybe work with, but
Yeah,
that one
that's a really
comes to
good
mind.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah, there is this new land use working group that the select board has kicked off, and that's just getting underway. And we do have a non-voting observer on that committee, and Kathy.
They haven't gotten in touch with me, but you said that's because they're just setting up.
Yeah, they're still getting set up.
I mean, we may wanna think of setting some, real goal here, and I'll just say, this year, $20,000 from some source that's not any of these. You know what I mean? Start to put some stake into it of driving some people's thoughts about revenue generation, right? Because just saying, like I said, we've been saying it for a long time and we haven't done anything about it. I take that back. It's not we haven't done anything about it. It hasn't materialized to what people want to see out of it.
But I think also this is, that's a function of a number of things. It took a while to get through COVID and be done with it. there are legitimately a couple of new opportunities that have come up in the last couple of years, and, you know, this stuff takes a lot of time. So 2229 Main Street and MCI
See,
Concord.
but those are all new things that are coming, right? We're not trying to see where within the town, you know, that's why, I mean, I've been on the committee for 6 years, and,
Yeah.
and it hasn't moved a substantial mark.
Well, Greg, maybe this is aligned with what you're thinking, but this committee didn't take a position on the proposed zoning changes at around Thoreau Depot that would have created more commercial development in that area. And it may have been a missed up, if something like that came along again, I would imagine that we would have more voice.
Why, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd have to really think through whether or not that's within our remit. It's, you know, everything that happens in town ends up having a financial impact somewhere, and that doesn't mean it's something that the finance committee, despite our name, should be dealing with. So
Let's
we
take a look
need
at that
to-
charter together, because it says everything that has to do with finances for the town.
We'll spend some time on that.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just mechanically, something to consider next year is how we do that. I mean, we have a guidelines subcommittee that works really well. And the proof is in the pudding this year. We got our guidelines in early, and the process worked really well. Maybe we consider a subcommittee type framework, where we'd have a subset of us who are focused on this stuff. Because I really didn't appreciate this until this year. I was struck by, we do have a very prescriptive schedule. We got to get our big deliverables done, and that tends to suck up a lot of the oxygen and a lot of our bandwidth. You know, we got to get those preliminary guidelines set, and then the final guidelines, and then it's preparing for town meeting, and then the annual report. And there's only so many meetings per month that we can have realistically, because we all of course have lives outside of this. So it's think about how we would do the work if we were to take on you know, like really meaty revenue generation goals.
I think you have to be very selective. You can't take on 7 or 8. You can take on 2, maybe 3. One might be recreation, because that is a revenue generating side. You know, so I think it's not, it's just kind of building on that. You know, if you do 2 or 3 now, you don't have to expand anymore. They might be different ones in subsequent years, but you get little teams together to work, 3 people from the committee to work on a topic. And they figure out the strategy of how they want to dive in or get recognition or whatever it is they are searching for. And then those 3 or 4, however many you put, would come back and be able to discuss that with the whole group. And it is public information, which then also other people, other than just this committee, has an opportunity to say, oh, right, revenue generating, how are we doing that? So that they see that we are concerned about taxes, that we are concerned about revenue, and that's all.
Okay, all right. Well, we can move on. I'd ask folks to reflect on this a bit more, and if you come up with other points, again, in the context of what we did well, what we could have done better, specific to our goals, or just big picture, please share them with me, and I'll compile them and circulate them after the fact as a resource for next year and into the future. So thank you for that. Back to our agenda. Next item is item number 8, Finance Committee offices for 2025, 2026. This is traditionally the meeting where we nominate and elect offices for the next year of the Finance Committee. In this case, it's the year that begins after annual town meeting adjourns. We do have several individuals who have expressed interest in the 6 officer roles or leadership roles. I've got a slide summarizing those roles and those individuals here. First, for chair, Lois. For vice chair, Lindsay. For clerk, Colin. Vice Clerk Pat, Guidelines Subcommittee Chair Dawn, and Guidelines Subcommittee Vice Chair Paul. And I also included the responsibilities for each, just as a refresher. With that, I'll entertain nominations from the floor, and we could nominate this group as a slate, or we could nominate one by one. Would anybody like to offer a nomination?
I mean, I can go, we can do it together.
We can.
What, so should we call each name or just, how do we want to do it?
I think it would suffice to nominate the slate of candidates or the slate of individuals that are displayed on the screen, Shri, that I just buzzed
Okay.
through.
Okay. Okay, I nominate the names listed here for the roles, which has been described next to their names.
Second.
Okay,
Okay, Kathy gives a second.
we have a second.
Under discussion?
Discussion.
Are all these 6 people happy with their nominations?
You can only ask
Happiness
five.
is a difficult concept.
Well, it's a lot of work, each one of those roles. So you better want to do it, and you better be happy about it, right?
For my part, yes.
I was gonna say, Carlin as clerk, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Lindsay, how about you? Are you happy? You good?
I'll just say, I think it's a great group. I think it's
I
going to
do
be a
too.
very
I
strong
do
leadership
too.
team and a strong committee.
Do we need to take a vote, or?
Yes.
We do need to
Okay.
take a vote, and we do have to have a roll call.
Okay.
Oh, there's-
So with, I think, any other points of discussion? Hearing none, I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Okay. Kathy Quoklo,
Yes.
Eric Dahlberg,
Yes.
Pat Geyer.
Yes.
Greg Gariello,
Yes.
Don Kupka, I'm a yes. Lindsay Less,
Yes.
Dee Ortner,
Absolutely, yes.
Carlin Reed,
Aye.
Kasi Sadruzman,
Yes.
Sri Tupel,
Yes.
Lois Wassoff.
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Okay, congratulations to our new offices. Now, again, they will
Concept.
take their roles after town meeting adjourns, and they will remain in those roles until 2026 annual town meeting adjourns.
Oh, so we may lose a month off our tenures. What a heartbreaker.
So do we talk now about our June meeting, our
We're going to say
organization?
goodbye to Dee and Greg for, and
We
then
have to
then we
say goodbye to
absolutely will.
us.
No, I don't want to.
All right, well, we'll skip that. Let's go on to the next meeting, then they have to come to the next meeting.
I like that.
We don't have any more meetings. It's a town meeting. You'll be at town meeting.
So we do have our next agenda item. Item number 9 is farewell to departing members, and that's Dee and Greg. And my goal is to make this as not awkward as possible. So I'll just say, speaking for myself, and then of course, I welcome other folks to speak up. It's been really a pleasure working with both of you. Dee, you've always asked the best questions. It's been a real pleasure working with you and serving with you, Greg.
Ditto.
Thank you, Greg. You've been able to get us to consensus on so many of the kind of prickly issues that we've dealt with. Most recently, guidelines this year. You were the one who kind of forged that compromise position that got us to yes on the final guideline. So it's just been a pleasure serving with both of you.
Same to you.
Thank you. And I invite other comments from
Okay.
members.
Dee, really, you bring a unique perspective to a lot of stuff, and the questions you ask really make me rethink my positions sometimes, and I appreciate it. And then, of course, there are the snacks, which, let's not understate the importance. And Greg, I really just, I agree with everything Eric said, but I also thought you handled the fact that your wife was in charge of the middle school building committee while you were on FinCom with real grace and transparency.
Thank you.
And you just, that situation was never awkward because you handled it so well.
Yeah.
And I think that should be acknowledged.
Thank you.
So.
She's rolling off as well, so hopefully that comes to a conclusion soon too.
So you two will have all this time on your
Time.
hands.
We'll see.
I wanted to say how much I appreciate the humor that the two of you brought to this committee.
Yes.
There are times when we had discussions that were pro, con, abstain, didn't matter which side of the argument, you raised the level of the discussion with that. And you also encouraged dissent. There were several times when the two of you were on the opposite side of everybody else, or opposite each other, but it didn't matter because you were able to make it be part of the whole organization and keep us on track as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it ain't over yet. We still have town meeting. But we do have small departing gifts for both of you on behalf of the committee.
Well, this is a surprise, a pleasant one.
Well, wait.
Yeah, maybe I better
It's just like saying, are you happy with your position?
open the package first.
You don't have to open them now, but these are just
Okay.
from
Thank you
I'm gonna
very
see
much.
though.
Appreciate
a
it.
small token of appreciation.
Thank you.
With under $45. Hey,
Eric, can
You
I
know,
just
it
add?
comforts-
Oh, if it's 400 million, then she can take it. It's-
It's the invoice for their name plaques, $5,000.
You just checked our revenue.
I did. It's a new source of revenue. See, we're already making progress next year. I just, it was, it hasn't been the easiest transition, and certainly I appreciate working with both of you. Dee, last year, being the first year, you really helped me a lot, and just thank you for the support, and Greg, too. You guys are fantastic, and I'm gonna miss working with both of you.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. With that, next meetings.
Yes.
Agenda item number 10.
The one
So
that Carlin has been just chomping.
of course, we've already talked about town meeting. We'll post for a FinCom meeting at tentatively 5:45 on Monday, June 2nd. I've taken an action item on that. I'll be in touch. And then our incoming chair is on the hook to schedule
Yeah, well, that-
a first regular meeting.
I've given it some thought. I think we should have one meeting in June, because it's good to do a debrief after town meeting. And I think, I was taking a lot of notes on the comments on last year's goals, and I think we should go right for that in June and think about, with all due respect to the select board, think about what we want to achieve, and some of the ideas that were thrown out, like breaking into, having a couple of subcommittees. I want to think about that, check with Carmen about the open meeting aspects of that. So I don't want to lose that. So what I was thinking of was Thursday, June 19th, or Thursday, June 26th. Either of those, only one. And do people want to just reach out to Eric? You're still chair, and everybody knows your email address. Reach out to Eric and just tell him what date you prefer, and we'll find the date that's convenient for the most people.
quick question, is Juneteenth, June 19th, a holiday?
It doesn't,
It is a holiday.
it is a holiday, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, plus, I think the select board are meeting on the 30th, and just in case we have line item transfers, I would need this board, so the later, the 26th, would be better from a
Would be better?
finance perspective.
Then
If
maybe
not,
that's the answer.
This
Okay.
way, we wouldn't have to have you come back before
Okay.
July 14th to make any approvals, so.
Okay,
So we said what?
so then we have that
26th.
certainty. The next meeting
What
is
time?
June 26th. I really enjoyed the innovation of starting at 6:30 and shooting for an 8:30 endpoint. Eric has big shoes to follow, but you guys, anybody who's been on the committee for a while know, I don't have a problem with cutting people off. So we're going to try to keep the movement that we've had in the meetings and try and keep them within a framework. It's really made, I think, all of our lives easier to have that predictability. So let's start at 6:30, and there'll be an agenda circulated in advance. For subsequent meetings, I want to just check, I think one of the agenda items in the June 26th meeting will be scheduling subsequent meetings, because I don't want to start chasing Carmen now about next year's town meeting while she's in the middle of this year's town meeting. But once I have a sense of what dates they're thinking about for next year's town meeting, we'll back off of that for our schedule. And we can also decide whether or not, one thing that Eric and I talked about was, it's been intense, and maybe we want to take July off, have a really productive meeting in June, and then pick up again in August. But we can talk about that when we schedule the meetings out. We're going to stick with Thursday nights, we're going to stick with 6:30. But unless anybody has other thoughts on that. Okay. So the next meeting, the minutes will reflect that the next meeting will be at 6:30 PM on June 26th, right here. And Eric's still on the committee. He isn't-
Yay!
So he can shoot me a look if I'm letting somebody go on too long, or if I've skipped around the agenda too much. He'll keep me honest.
Madam New
Okay.
Chair, or future Chair, when will you be talking about liaison assignments?
That is something that will be on the agenda for that meeting, because that will also be the first meeting where the two new members of the committee,
Who are?
oh, God, help me.
We probably shouldn't
Chris
get,
Johnson?
we probably shouldn't get ahead of the moderator in announcing them. I know she's got two
Yeah.
people in mind. I don't think it's official until town meeting, so I think we should hold off,
Just have to wait.
just in case something changed, and, that I'm not aware of.
Just a suggestion, well,
Yeah, no, go
I'll
ahead.
talk to you offline.
Okay, all right, whatever.
Lois, do you think we'll be meeting in July and August as well?
I was thinking of skipping July,
Okay.
but we'll see if, and having our next meeting in August, if that works for people. We might have to have an extra meeting in August, September timeframe as penance for that. But I think it would be nice to take a little bit of a break, and July is really slow, and I really think that the schools would love to not hear from us that early about reminding them that they got to do the whole budget thing all over again. So,
Hear from them.
I'm happy to hear from them. One of the assignments I'm going to take for over the summer is to make sure, once all the chairs are identified of all the committees for the coming year, I'm going to drink a lot of coffee this summer and meet with the chairs of all the committees that we engage with, and try and build on the work that Eric did to have bridges, effective lines of communication with the other committees that we're going to be working with, because, that's critical. If things went well, you never accomplish everything you want to. You can look back on the year and find things that you might have done differently. But one area I think we can feel good about was that the Finance Committee rebuilt relationships in this past year, and I'm very hopeful that we can continue down that path. So that'll be my summer. I don't go away in the summer. So that's the plan.
Okay.
One thing, we may have a special town election in July, and that, but the FinCom doesn't have any role in town elections. We don't need to give any opinions about that, do we?
No,
Okay, good, then we're clear.
no, we don't. You mean to approve borrowing?
Right, for 34 and 13.
Right, yeah, no, that's a good point. No, we have opined where, for purposes of the town election, we are individual citizens casting our votes.
Okay. All right, our last agenda item is recap of action items and adjourn. The action items I've captured are, one, Anthony, some additional details on the certified free cash figure, and some options on how to think about using it. 2, I will work with Anthony to get that pre-town meeting posted for Monday, the 2nd at 5:45. Be on the lookout for that. 3, this didn't come up. Well, Colin, you mentioned it, and I realized I haven't done it yet. We had the final chairs breakfast of this cycle was yesterday, and I have the notes typed up. I just haven't hit send. I'll send those out. Lots of good updates at that meeting. And then 4, for Lois, get that June 26th meeting, work with Anthony to get that June 26th meeting posted. I'm happy to help with that, since that's your first time doing that.
5, me to post minutes.
Yes, that goes without saying. Thank you, Colin. Post the 5-1 minutes. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
8:05.
Okay.